Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new Unreal Engine 5 VR tutorial. In this lesson, we're going to create a head-mounted flashlight in VR that we can toggle by pressing the trigger while holding our hands to the side of our head. In this lesson, we will cover quickly setting up a nighttime scene for testing our flashlight, creating a custom flashlight actor with collision detection, implement VR hand controls for toggling the flashlight on and off, and finally, using lighting channels to create more natural-looking shadows. If you enjoy the tutorial, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel. The project files for this tutorial can be downloaded for free. I'll link to the files in the video description below. Now let's get started. Okay, so here we are in a brand new VR template project. Now before we create the flashlight actor, we're just going to change the scene a little bit to be a nighttime scene, to be a better setting for testing our flashlight. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the directional light here. You can find it in the outliner under directional light. And I'm going to hold down the right control and L key to bring up the gizmo here that determines which way the directional light is facing. I'm just going to face it straight down. Okay, now you'll notice not much in the scene has actually changed, and that's because the VR template, the way that it's set up is a little bit different to normal Unreal Engine projects that use Lumen. So first of all, the light is baked, so the light does not actually update in real time. And secondly, we're using a sky sphere here that uses a fake sun. So that's not actually our directional light, that's just a image of a light that's part of the sky sphere. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the sky sphere just by clicking in the sky or selecting sky sphere in our outliner, and then search for sun, and then just change the sun brightness to 0, and then that will get rid of that sun image. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to search for directional light actor. Now if you hover the mouse over here, what it says is you can assign your level's directional light actor to this variable to match the sky's sun position and color. Okay, so we'll go to select our drop down menu here and select the directional light in our scene, and now you'll see that our scene has turned into a nice nighttime scene with stars. And I believe you can actually change the star's brightness as well. Yes, you can. So it is a default of 0.1, which I think is fine for me. So after we've done that, all we need to do now is just bake our lighting so that our light updates to what it should be. So we'll go up here, select build. You can select your build quality. I'm just going to leave mine at preview, but if you want the highest quality, you can select production. And then I'm going to select build lighting only. And that'll take a few seconds because our scene is not very complex. And there we go. Now our lighting has been updated and baked into our scene. So now we've got a dark scene at nighttime and we're ready to test our flashlight actor. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up our content drawer. We'll go up to the content folder. Because there aren't many assets that we need for this project, I'm just going to create it in this base content folder here. So this is where you'll find all the new content if you download the project files. So we're going to right click, select blueprint actor, and we want to select the actor class. And we'll call this BP underscore flashlight and then save. Now we'll double click that to open up the actor. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create 2 collision boxes, one for either side of the head, and we're going to use those collision boxes to register collision events to know when we can turn on and off our flashlight. So we'll just select our default scene route here and click add component, and we'll type in box collision, select that one, and I'll name this one flashlight detect underscore left. And now this collision box is a little bit big, so I'm going to just decrease the size a bit. So under this area here where it says shape, you'll see that the box extent is 32 units by 32 units by 32. I'm going to change this to 7 by 10 by 7. And then I'm just going to shift it 13 units to the left. So that's minus 13 in the location. Of course, this is our right, but it will be the player's left. And now we're just going to duplicate that collision box, and we'll call this flashlight detect underscore right, and we'll move this to positive 13 units in the location. So now we've got one collision unit for each side of our head. So now we'll actually create the flashlight. So we'll select our default scene route again, select add component, and add a, what do we want to add? We want to add a spotlight. Now we want this flashlight to be slightly up and slightly forward from the head. So I'm going to move this into the location 8 on the x-axis. We'll keep it 0 on the y-axis, and then a 5 on the z-axis. So that moves it slightly up and forward. And then lastly for now, I'm going to add an audio component as well. So I'll select the spotlight we created, and actually I'll rename this to flashlight. And then while we've still got that selected, I'll add a new component and add in an audio component, this one here, and we'll call this flashlight click. And now this is very important too. We want to make sure that we go over to the details panel here and search for auto. We want to make sure that auto activate is turned off. If this is left checked on, this audio, whatever we assign as this audio component, will play as soon as the game starts. So we don't want that, so make sure that's deactivated and compile and save. So that's all we need to worry about with the components for now. So before we add the code for this blueprint, let's actually just add this blueprint class to our VRPawn. So I'm going to go down to the content drawer, and then I'll select VR template, blueprints, and VRPawn. And we'll go into our viewport here. And what we'll do is we will select this this component here, which is called the head mounted display mesh. Select that, and we're going to add a component, and we're going to add a child actor. And we'll call this BP flashlight. And then while that's selected, go over to the child actor class here, select the drop down and type in BP flashlight, and then select the flashlight class, compile and save. And now you'll see that that flashlight actor has been added as a child component to our VRPawn. Now I'm just going to move it slightly, so I might move it a little bit backwards. So I think -6 on the x-axis, and yep, that is fine for now. Okay, compile and save. So we'll go back to our BP flashlight actor, and now we'll go into our event graph. And now we're going to create a function that will toggle our flashlight on and off. So we're going to go to functions down here, select the add button, and call this toggle flashlight. Now we're going to use the same function to toggle our flashlight on and off. So I'm going to add a couple booleans here. So for under inputs, I'll add a boolean value, and I'll call this enable ? And then I'll add a second boolean called play sound ? Now I'll explain a little bit later why we've used this play sound boolean, but for now that's fine. Out of enable, we're going to create a branch, and we want to get a reference to our flashlight, so we'll drag that out onto the graph, and then set visibility. Hook that up to true. Now if we are enabling our flashlight, we want the visibility to be true. And we're going to create a variable here of type boolean, and that will be called flashlight enabled ? And we'll drag that out onto the graph, and we'll set that to true. Next, we will get a reference to our boolean input here. So with functions, you don't actually need to drag a pin out to get a reference. You can actually just right click and type in the name of the input, and then you can get a reference to it like so. So now I'll get a branch from that and hook that up like so. And if play sound is true, we want to get a reference to our flashlight click, and then drag off that and type in play. Now we haven't actually created our sound yet, but that's fine. We'll just hook this up like so for now. And now off the false branch, we want to do exactly the same thing. So we'll just copy all of this and paste. Except this time we want to turn the visibility to false and set the flashlight enabled boolean to false as well. So that's our function created. So we'll close that, we'll go back to our event graph. So now what we'll do is I'll select our flashlight detect left collision box here, and we'll scroll all the way down and find on component begin overlap and press this plus button here. So what are we going to do here? Well, you're probably more used to using the other actor output pin here. So you would use this to determine if the other actor is of a certain type. For example, do something like this. If the other actor that collides with this collision box is equal to your player character, then proceed with the logic. But we're not going to do that because, and we'll just go back to our VRPawn just to go over a couple basics of how this works. So this here, everything you see here in this components table here makes up this actor. So all of these different components are components of the VRPawn actor. And what we want to do is, rather than checking whether another actor has collided with this collision box, we actually want to check if a very specific component has collided with this collision box. So what we're going to do is we'll go to our VRPawn, and I'm just going to hide some of these components here so that we can see our hands. So I'll select the head-mounted display and look for visible and just turn that off. And I'll just slow down our camera navigation speed so we're not flying off everywhere. And we'll just zoom in here to take a look at the hands. What we're going to do is we're going to add a small static mesh that will be invisible to each of our index fingers, and that's the component that's going to collide with our collision boxes. So when our index fingers overlap with our collision boxes, then that will be what helps trigger the flashlight. So first things first, I will select the left hand mesh, and I will select add component, and I will type cube. And it's actually quite big at the moment. It's way too big for our purposes. So I'm going to shrink this way down, and the scale I found that works best for me is on the X scale is 0.0075. On the Y scale is 0.01. And on the Z scale is 0.03. Now we'll go back to our hand here, and what we're going to do here is we're going to select a parent socket, and we're going to look for index 3L. That's the index bone at the very end of the finger. Now we'll rename this to index collision left, and we will duplicate it. So I'll duplicate that, and I'll call this index collision right, and I will drag this on top of the right hand mesh like so. And we just need to reset our location here, and then assign our parent socket to index 3 index underscore 03 underscore R. There it is there. Okay. Now we're almost done with these, so I will select our index collision left again, and I'm going to search in the details panel for tag. And now you'll see that there's this option here called component tags. I'm going to add a component tag, and I will call this toggle flashlight underscore left. And then we'll select our index collision right, add a component tag, and we'll call this toggle flashlight underscore right. Compile and save. So now when we go back to our flashlight actor, if we drag off other component, we can type in component has tag, and the tag name needs to be exactly the same. So for our flashlight detect underscore left, we need so we'll copy the toggle flashlight underscore left and paste that into the tag name, and then create a branch and hook that up like so. Now we might as well create the onComponent begin overlap for the right flashlight detect as well. So I'm going to select the flashlight detect underscore right and then select onComponent begin overlap. I'll copy both of these, hook them up like so. Remember to select the other component output pin, not the other actor. And then I'll just change the tag here from left to right. So essentially what this is doing is it's checking for other components that overlap with this collision box, and it's checking if that component has the tag toggle flashlight underscore left. And if it does, then we can continue with our logic. And it's at this point that we need to make use of a special kind of flow control node called a gate. So if we right click and type in gate, you'll see it's this one here. So this is a type of special flow control node that can open and close the output of execution like a gate. So to give you an example, if I hook up the event tick node to the enter pin here, and then if we out of the exit pin type in print string, what's going to happen here is that our execution is going to flow into our gate, but it's only going to flow out the other side if the gate is opened. At the moment, the gate is starting closed. And just to give you a demonstration, and just in order for this to work, I just need to add the VRPawn to the actual level itself, because at the moment we've only got the player start actor there. So now that I've got that there, if I press play, you'll notice that nothing has been printed to the screen, and that's because our gate is closed. But if we go back here and deselect that, so now our gate should start open. If we press play again, you'll see that it's printing to the screen. But that's, of course, not the only way that you can open and close the gate. You can also open and close the gate through executions here. So what we are going to do in this case, I'll just disconnect this event tick node because we won't need that, and we aren't going to need the print string. What we're going to do is we're going to use the overlap event. So when our index collision overlaps with our flashlight detect collision box, then we will open the gate, and that will allow our logic to proceed. And once it leaves our collision box, then we will close the gate. So we also need to create an on-component end overlap as well. So if we select our left collision box and scroll all the way down and select on-component end overlap, just drag this up here, and we will copy these two nodes and hook them up like so. And then we will hook up the true value to close. So when our index collision that has this tag overlaps with our collision box, it will open the gate. And when our index collision ends overlap, it will close the gate. And then from here, what we will do is we will drag out our toggle flashlight function that we created. And we will also drag out our flashlight enabled boolean as a get. And then we'll create a branch here. So connect that up like so. So if the flashlight is enabled, we want to disable it. So we'll leave enabled unchecked. We will check play sound, and we will duplicate our function, hook that up to false. So if our flashlight is not enabled, we want to enable it. So that handles that, but at the moment, this is still not going to do anything because all these are doing is opening and closing the gates. It's not actually sending any execution through. So for that, we need something to go into our enter pin here. And for that, what we're going to do is we're going to create a blueprint interface event. So we'll go to our content drawer, go back to our content folder, right click, and then under blueprint, we will create a blueprint interface, and we will call this BPI_flashlight. And then open that up, and we will call this toggle flashlight left. And we'll create another one as well called toggle flashlight right. Now, blueprint interfaces, you can't create any logic. It says, you'll see here that it says read only. We can only create the names of the functions or events in this case. Now we'll go back to our flashlight actor, and up here where it says class settings, we need to implement this interface. So we'll go to where it says implemented interfaces, click add, and then search for BPI_flashlight and then add it there. Compile and save. And now if we expand this drop down here, you'll see our two events here. We'll double click on toggle flashlight left, drag this up, and we will connect this to our enter. So now when this event is triggered, it will toggle our flashlight, but only if our gate is in an open state. So that's all we need to do for the left side. Let's complete the right side as well. So let's select our flashlight detect right, expand this out, scroll all the way down and select on component end overlap. Copy these two nodes, hook up the execution, and then hook up our other component pin. And then from the true pin, we'll just right click and type in gate. We'll hook the true up to open and the end overlap true up to close. And then we'll double click on our toggle flashlight right event, drag this up, and then hook that up to the enter pin. And then we'll drag out a get flashlight enabled, create a branch, and we will just copy these two functions here and hook them up like so. So that's everything set up here that we need to. The only thing that we need to take care of now is actually calling these two interface events. And for that, we're going to do that in our VRPawn. So we'll go back to our VRPawn and we will go to our event graph. And what we're looking for here is we're looking for down in this section here where the comment says hand animation input. And we're going to look for these two input actions here. So we've got input action hand index curl left, and then to the right of that, we've got input action hand index curl right. And I'm just going to create a bit of space here. So I'll select all of these and move that down like so. So we've got a bit of room here. And then what we're going to do here is we'll just expand this input action event, and we're going to use the started output. So if you don't know already, so the triggered output is, the triggered output fires constantly for as long as the input action is held down. The started output only fires once. So that's the one that we want. and we want to actually create a new function here in our VRPawn. So we'll go over here, select create a new function, and we'll call this toggle flashlight. And because we have two different hands controlling this, I'm going to create an input boolean here. So I'm going to select the input node and then add an input of type boolean, and I will call this is left hand question mark, and then add a branch. Now, one thing that we want to maybe keep in mind is that you may not want to do this, but this is how I do it. So when I toggle the flashlight with either my left or my right hand, I only want to be able to toggle the flashlight so long as my hand is not holding another actor or object. And there's a handy variable that we'll make use of here. If we right click and type in get held component and left, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click this node and select convert to validated get, and I'm going to hook the true value up here, and I only want to execute this if the held component left variable is not valid. That means if it's not valid, it means that it's not currently holding another object. Okay, so now what we'll do is we will get a reference to our BP flashlight child actor component. So we'll drag that out. We will drag off that and type get child actor. And now we will call that interface event. So we'll output there and type in toggle flashlight left message. So it's an interface message, and we'll hook that up to the is not valid output there. So if held left component is not valid, meaning in other words, if the left hand is not holding anything, then toggle the flashlight. And then out of the false, we'll do the same thing. We'll get held right component, right click, convert to a validated get. And this time we want to call the toggle flashlight right. So we'll just copy those two nodes here and drag off and toggle flashlight right message, and then hook that up to is not valid. And save, we'll go back to our event graph, and then we will drag our new function out onto the event graph here and connect it up to the started output. And since this is the left hand, we will mark the is left hand as true, compile and save. And then we'll do the same thing over here. We'll expand the event node, drag the toggle function onto the event graph, hook it up to started, and because this is not the left hand, we'll leave that as untrue. So what's happening here is that every time we press our left trigger or our right trigger down, it's going to call the left and right interface events in our flashlight actor. So every time we press the trigger button, these are going to fire, but it's only going to toggle our flashlight if our gate is open. So that means that it will only toggle the flashlight if we press our trigger button when our index finger is overlapping with our collision box, and only if our hands are not already holding something else. So that's almost everything. So we'll take care of adding in our sound for our flashlight click. Now what we'll do is we'll go to our content drawer and back into our content folder. Now you can download your own audio sample from wherever you like. In the free download files for this project, I've actually included this flashlight click, which is a free public domain sound effect that we're going to use. We'll just add a little bit of variety to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, go to audio, and then select meta sound source. And I'm going to call this ms underscore flashlight click. Open that up. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to add in the sound, but every time that every time the sound plays, it's going to be a slightly different version of that sound. So I'll right click and type in wave player, and it's a mono sound. So we'll select wave player 1 mono. And just to get a bit of variety, we're going to assign a random value to our pitch here. So out of on play, I'll drag off and type in random, and we want random float. And we'll set a value between -1.5 and 1.5. And then I'll hook the value up to the pitch shift. And then out of on next, we will do play. And then finally, just to finish off our meta sound here, out of on finished, we will hook that up to on finished. And out of out audio, we'll hook that up to out audio. And of course, we just need to assign our asset here. So I will highlight it from the content drawer and assign it like so. And now every time we play this sound, it will have a slightly different pitch to it, just to give it a bit of variation. We'll save that, go back into our BP_flashlight, and then for our flashlight click component, we will assign our ms_flashlight click. Compile and save. Test this out in a moment, but one more thing I'll do before we finish up is I'll go back to our BP_flashlight, and off of BeginPlay, I'm going to add our toggle flashlight function and hook that up, and I'm going to set it to enabled, and I'm not going to enable the play sound variable. So what this will mean is that when the game starts, our light will be turned on, but it won't play a sound when the game starts. So now that that's done, okay, so let's put on our headsets and test this out. Okay, so here we are in our virtual reality world. We've got some lovely little stars in the sky, and we've got our flashlight working. Now, if I hold my hand to the left side of my head and press the trigger button, we can toggle our flashlight on and off. The same with our right hand. And that's all working perfectly. The one thing that we might actually add just before we finish up today is that you'll notice that we're getting some very highly contrasted and a little bit harsh shadows coming off our hands and onto the environment around us. Now, you might like this particular style, but I'm going to just show you something that can make these shadows a little less harsh, and just a little trick to make these shadows a little less distracting. So we'll exit out of this game, and we will do that now. So the way that we're going to achieve this is we're going to make use of lighting channels. So we're going to select our spotlight from our components tab, go over to details, and we're going to search for channel. Now you'll notice these three channels here, channel 0, channel 1, and channel 2. Now what these are used for is that any object in our world that is assigned to channel 0, this light will affect that object in the world. So it will cast light onto it, it will cast shadows behind it, etc., etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our VRPawn, go to our viewport, and we will just go over to our hand meshes here, select the left hand mesh, and then search channel. And then rather than this hand mesh being on channel 0, we're going to unselect channel 0 and change it to channel 1. And we'll do the same for the right hand mesh, change that to channel 1. So that means that now this light will not affect those two hand meshes. But that might look a bit awkward because our hands will be pitch black and there'll be absolutely no shadow at all. So what I do here is I create a secondary light that's more of an ambient light. So I'll select our flashlight here, add a new component as a child to that, and I'll type in, we want point light, flashlight underscore glow, and I will bring the attenuation radius down from 1000 to 250, and I'll bring the intensity down from 5000 to 100. And then finally, if we search for channel, we will change this lighting channel from channel 0 to channel 1. So now this light will affect our two hand meshes. And the very last thing that we need to do is go back to our toggle flashlight function, drag off a reference to our flashlight glow, and plug it into the target pin for the set visibility node on each branch. We put our headset back on. So now if we look at our hands, you'll see that light is still affecting our hands, but it's not as harsh anymore. And if we go a little bit closer to our wall, you'll notice that it's not creating those really harsh shadows anymore. Now I've just actually noticed that we're actually, I'm not sure if you can see that, but we're actually creating shadows from our index collision boxes. That's because it looks like we forgot to make them hidden in game. I'll exit out of this and we will take a look at our VRPawn and our index collision right. We will change, we'll find hidden in game, mark that to true, and we will do the same for our index collision left, mark that as hidden in game. Now if we launch again, and now that issue is gone. So you can see that the hands are being illuminated by light, and you can see that there is some shadow moving between them, but now the shadows aren't distracting anymore. So this might be a little bit more comfortable for your players. But anyway, that's it. This is the flashlight system, how it works, and yeah, pretty simple but effective means of using a flashlight in VR. Hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.